All right, let's dive into one of the most detailed, most compassionate accounts of Jesus' life ever written, the Gospel of Luke. And this is so much more than just a story. It's really a meticulous investigation, led by a doctor no less, into a figure who absolutely turned the world upside down.
So to really get what makes Luke's account so different, we've got to start with a question that gets right to the heart of the whole thing. What if the most detailed biography of Jesus was written by an outsider? Specifically for outsiders. I mean, think about that. What if it was intentionally crafted by a non-Jew for a world that felt totally left out of the story of God and Israel? That one single idea, well, it changes everything.
So first things first, who exactly was this author? Well, early tradition and a ton of clues in the text itself all point to one guy, Luke. And get this, he wasn't a fisherman or a tax collector. He was a doctor and historian. And you can feel that professional precision in every single line he writes.
I mean, Luke's resume is really what makes him stand out from the crowd. He's called the beloved physician, he was a travel buddy of the Apostle Paul, and he tackled this project like a true scholar. You have to imagine, for his original Greek and Roman audience, hearing that the author was a doctor and a historian, that was a huge deal. It immediately signaled credibility. This wasn't some myth or legend, this was serious, documented work.
And Luke tells us his goal right up front. He says he wants to create an orderly account for a guy named Theophilus. But the Greek word he uses there, katakeo, isn't just a casual word. It's a technical term that means to instruct systematically. So Luke is basically saying, look, I've done the legwork, I've interviewed the eyewitnesses, I've gathered all the testimony, I've sorted it all out, and now I'm presenting my findings so you can know the truth for yourself. It's basically ancient investigative journalism, and it's awesome.
Okay, so with that foundation of credibility totally established, Luke kicks off his story. And right from the very first scenes, he makes this incredibly bold, radical claim about who this king, Jesus, really is.
He starts with these two parallel birth stories, John the Baptist and Jesus, and he sets them up as a perfect contrast. On one hand, you've got John, who's presented as the last great prophet of the Old Testament, the guy preparing Israel to finally meet their God. But Jesus is something else entirely. He's the messianic king who won't just rule Israel, but will bring God's blessing to all nations. And that one distinction, it sets the stage for the entire book.
And if you're not convinced, just look at the genealogy he includes. It's wild. You see, Matthew's gospel traces Jesus' family tree back to Abraham, the father of Israel, which makes sense. But Luke, he goes way, way further. He traces Jesus' lineage all the way back to Adam, the father of all humanity. The message is just screaming off the page. Jesus is not just for Israel. He's for everyone, the savior for the entire human race.
So now that we know who Jesus is, Luke shifts to what Jesus came to do. And in his very first public appearance, Jesus drops a bombshell, a mission statement, a manifesto that's about to turn the world's values completely upside down.
Imagine this. Jesus walks into the synagogue in his hometown, unrolls the scroll of the prophet Isaiah, and reads these words. And this isn't just him picking a nice quote for the day. No way. This is his declaration. This is his campaign platform. This is the mission statement for his entire ministry, bringing good news and liberation. But what does that really mean? Well, let's break it down. The Greek word for freedom he uses is aphesis. It literally means release. And for anyone listening back then, that word would have been like a giant flashing light. It would have immediately made them think of the year of Jubilee from their scriptures, this legendary time when all debts were canceled, all slaves were freed, everything was reset. So what Jesus is doing here is huge. He's announcing a great cosmic jubilee for everyone, a total release from everything that holds us captive.
And who's this good news for? He says it's for the poor. But we have to be careful here. The Hebrew idea of the poor, the ani, isn't just about not having money. It's so much bigger. It means anyone on the fringes, anyone with low social status. We're talking about the sick, the disabled, women, children. Basically, anyone society had written off as an outcast. So the most important thing to get is this. Jesus' mission is aimed squarely at the people everyone else had forgotten. So what you end up with is this total reversal of how the world works, right? The kingdoms we know run on power, status, and wealth. And they're all about excluding people who aren't good enough. Jesus' kingdom flips that script entirely. It's built on service, humility, and generosity. And its number one feature? Radical, shocking, welcome everyone inclusion. No exceptions. So, okay, that's the theory. But what does it actually look like? Well, the whole middle section of Luke's gospel is basically a road trip. It's this long journey to Jerusalem, and along the way, Jesus shows us exactly what his upside-down kingdom looks like in real life. And Luke packs this journey with stories that would have absolutely floored his first readers. I mean, just think about it. Jesus heals the servant of a Roman centurion, one of the occupiers. He welcomes a crooked tax collector like Zacchaeus back into the community. He tells a story where the hero is a Samaritan, a sworn enemy. He's constantly eating with people everyone else called sinners, offering them a seat at the table. He's not just talking about an inclusive kingdom, he's literally building a new kind of family out of the people everyone else had thrown away. And this all builds to one of the most famous stories ever told, the parable of the prodigal son. And you have to know, Jesus tells the story directly to the religious leaders who are freaking out about him hanging out with sinners. The story is a perfect snapshot of his entire mission. The father in the story, who represents God, doesn't just put up with his lost son coming home. He runs out to meet him and throws the party of a lifetime. It's all about God's wild, joyous welcome. And the only entry requirement? Just be humble enough to turn around and come home.
Now, you can't go around turning the world upside down without making a few enemies. This journey of radical inclusion is on a collision course with the powers that be. Jesus' message is a direct threat to the establishment, and the final showdown is going to happen in Jerusalem.
And Luke uses this really specific, powerful phrase to describe Jesus' determination. It says he firmly established his face to go to Jerusalem. Now, that's not just poetic language. It's the kind of phrase used in the Old Testament when a prophet gets a direct mission from God. It tells us Jesus isn't some poor victim of circumstance. No, he is marching with absolute purpose toward his destiny, to face down sin and death right in the heart of the capital. And in that final week, everything accelerates. At the Last Supper, Jesus takes the Passover meal, the ultimate symbol of Israel's freedom from slavery, and gives it a brand new meaning. It's now about a new kind of freedom, bought with his own body and blood. Luke goes out of his way to highlight his innocence. Pilate, the Roman governor himself, declares Jesus innocent, not once, not twice, but 3 times, and yet he's crucified. But even from the cross, in his final moments, he lives out his message, forgiving the very people killing him. And then, the tomb is empty. But here's the thing, the resurrection isn't the end of the story, not even close. For Luke, it's the explosive start of a whole new chapter. It's the one event that proves Jesus was who he said he was, and it's the launchpad for a mission that's about to go global. And Luke includes this incredible story that's unique to his gospel. You have these 2 disciples walking away from Jerusalem, just completely devastated and confused. Jesus himself comes and walks alongside them, but they have no idea who he is. Why? Because their minds are still stuck on their version of the Messiah, a military king, a political savior. It's only when they sit down to eat together and Jesus takes the bread and breaks it that suddenly their eyes are opened. It's a beautiful, profound point. You can't see the real Jesus as long as you're clinging to your own expectations. You only truly recognize him when you embrace his upside-down kingdom of self-sacrificing love. After that, Jesus appears to all his disciples and finally connects all the dots for them. He walks them through the scriptures and shows them how this was actually God's plan from the very beginning. The path to the throne wasn't through power and force, but through suffering and sacrifice. He had to die for the world's brokenness in order to defeat evil for good with his resurrection life. This, he says, is how the new creation gets started. And all of this leads to his final instruction, the marching orders that will kick off Luke's second book, the book of Acts. He tells them this message of forgiveness and new life, it can't stay in Jerusalem. It has to be proclaimed in his name to all nations. The story that started with one small nation is now meant for the entire world.
So, in the end, Luke's careful, doctor-led investigation leaves us right here. His entire gospel is a story about God's wild, celebratory, relentless welcome of every single kind of person, especially those the world has pushed to the side. And so, that leaves us with a pretty challenging question, doesn't it? If that is the heart of Jesus' mission, who are the outsiders, the marginalized, the people on the fringes in our world that we're being called to welcome into the party today?